My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the man who said no one would ever love me. I still remember the exact moment those words left Derek's mouth. Cold, sharp, cruel. We were standing in our small, overpriced kitchen, the one I spent hours in every week trying to make feel like home. I had just asked him if we could try counseling, try something, and he laughed, a dry, joyless sound. You should be grateful I even stayed this long, he said, leaning against the counter like he was bored of me. No one else will ever love you. The way he said it, like it was a fact, like it was a truth the world already knew and I had somehow missed. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just stood there, holding a chipped mug, trying not to shake. I packed quietly that night, stuffing the last of my self-worth between shoes and shampoo bottles. And the worst part, I believed him. For a while, I really did. The healing wasn't fast. It wasn't cinematic. It was slow, bitter, ugly at times. But it was real. And one day, years later, it led me to someone who saw me, truly saw me, not as a burden, not as a fixer-upper, but as a woman worth choosing every day. So yes, Derek broke me, but he also gave me the spark I needed to rebuild. And when the time came, when the invitations were being sent out for the most beautiful, joyful, utterly earned day of my life, I made sure his name was on the list. Not because I wanted him there, but because I wanted him to watch. Because my wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was revenge, poetic, public, and perfectly calculated. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs and never once complained. We didn't have much, but she gave me everything she could. Stability, a roof, quiet strength. I was the dependable one, the helper, the fixer. I stayed out of trouble, got decent grades, always put others first. That's what I was taught love looked like. Sacrifice, patience, making yourself smaller so others could breathe easier. I met Derek when I was 25. He was everything I wasn't. Loud, magnetic, full of swagger. He had this way of walking into a room like it owed him something, and I was drawn to it. At first, he made me feel alive, really seen, like I was finally stepping out of the background and into someone's spotlight. He said I was beautiful, different. He made me feel needed, and I mistook that for love. But it didn't stay beautiful. Slowly, his compliments turned into commentary. He started making jokes about my weight, how I'd look so much better if I just tightened up. He told me my job in community mental health was cute, but real therapists open private practices, not trauma circles for sad girls. When I got accepted into a part-time grad program, he laughed and said, "And what? Leave me here to fund your little empowerment dream." I laughed too, because I didn't know how else to respond. It wasn't like he screamed or hit or cheated. He chipped away at me, word by word, glance by glance. When I pulled away from old friends, he said, I was just growing up. When I stopped wearing bright colors, he said I looked more elegant. When I cried, he told me I was being dramatic, and I believed him, because believing him felt safer than realizing I'd given years of my life to someone who didn't love me. Not really. My best friend Jordan saw it happening. We'd been friends since freshman year of college. Late-night pizza runs, shared heartbreaks, every version of each other. But as Derek took up more space, I gave Jordan less. Still, she never left. She'd ask questions gently, never push too hard. She was always there, watching, waiting, hurting for me, and underneath it all, I still had my dream, even when I buried it. I wanted to open a trauma-informed therapy practice, a space for women who had been broken in quiet, subtle ways. Women who weren't sure if they were allowed to call it pain, because it didn't leave bruises. I wanted to help them find strength again, even though I couldn't yet find mine. Back then, I told myself love meant staying, but the truth was, I stayed because I didn't yet believe I deserved something more. The night everything snapped, I had planned a quiet anniversary dinner, candles, his favorite bourbon-glazed salmon, soft music, and a handwritten card with memories from each year we'd been together. I'd even curled my hair, something he used to love. He showed up 2 hours late, smelling like whiskey and someone else's cologne. And within minutes he'd started a fight over the wine not being chilled enough. I don't remember what I said. That triggered it. Maybe I asked if he was okay. Or maybe I finally didn't. But I'll never forget what he said. He leaned across the kitchen island, his voice low and cruel. "No one will ever love you like I do, and no one else would even want to." That line broke something open inside me. Not because it was new. He'd said versions of it before, in different tones, with different smiles. But because, for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just felt hollow. Like my heart had finally caught up to what my brain had been trying to scream for years. I left that night with just a backpack and my toothbrush. I remember driving aimlessly through the city, wiping away tears with the sleeve of the sweatshirt I used to wear around him because he said it was the only one that didn't make me look wide. I found a cheap extended stay studio and checked in under my maiden name. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of that room, knees hugged to my chest, whispering into the phone to my mom. I think I lost myself. The next day, I called Jordan. She came over with a box of tissues and takeout and didn't say "I told you so." She just sat with me, held my hand, and when I told her everything, every moment I had buried, every insult I digested like truth, she didn't flinch. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Claire, he didn't break you. You bent, and now you bend back." With her help, I found a therapist, a real one, who understood trauma and control and shame. She gave me homework, and I took it seriously. That first week, I started a list titled, "Things I Was Always Afraid to Do." The list was long at the top. Go back to school, speak up, be alone, start my own practice, learn to love again. It wasn't a list of revenge. It was a list of resurrection. Claire's healing didn't come like a movie montage. No perfectly timed music or effortless glow-up. It came through scraped knees and late-night doubts. Through group therapy meetings where she sobbed in front of strangers. And essays she almost didn't submit. But she kept going. She enrolled in graduate school for counseling psychology. The first class, she sat in the back, her hands shaking as she introduced herself. She felt old, rusty, and unworthy. But the professors welcomed her. The students listened. Slowly, she started to believe that maybe she belonged. She joined a women's empowerment group, weekly meetings in a dusty church basement where survivors talked about healing, boundaries, fear, and worth. In their stories, Claire found echoes of herself and a reminder that pain was not unique, but transformation could be. She began counseling clients during her practicum. She saw pieces of her old self in their stories. Women who whispered instead of speaking, who apologized for crying, who said, "I don't know if this counts as abuse." She started to heal by helping them see what she never could. Until now. One day, she deleted Derek's number. But first, she memorized it. Not because she wanted to call, but because forgetting it felt too generous. It was a scar she'd earned, a reminder of what she'd survived. She worked, studied, built a small life. It wasn't glamorous. It was grounded, and then, 2 years in, she met Ethan. He wasn't loud. He didn't sweep her off her feet. He just sat next to her at a fundraiser, handed her a glass of water when she choked on her appetizer, and listened when she said she hated small talk. Ethan didn't try to fix her. He didn't flinch when she talked about her past. He saw her, not as a wounded bird or a puzzle to solve, but as a woman still becoming. And that terrified Claire. At first, she self-sabotaged, missed dates, pulled back, told herself he'd eventually see the mess and leave. But he didn't. He stayed, quietly, consistently. He asked questions without prying, gave space without disappearing. And eventually, Claire let herself fall. Not all at once, but in pieces. And on her terms, they moved in together after a year. Slowly, she began to imagine a future. One not built in reaction to Derek, but in hope with Ethan. Then, one day, she's scrolling through Instagram and sees a post from an old mutual friend. High school reunion. Invite. No plus ones unless married. Claire bursts out laughing. Ethan peeks over her shoulder. That real? Oh, very, she says, still giggling. God, can you imagine the egos in that room? But as the laughter fades, something clicks into place. Not about the reunion, about the wedding. An idea begins to form. Bold, poetic, maybe even a little petty. But for the first time in years, Claire isn't afraid of being too much, because this time, the spotlight and the story will be hers. Claire and Ethan's engagement was quiet and beautiful. No flashy proposal. Just a morning walk through the park where Ethan knelt down with trembling hands and asked, "Would you build the rest with me?" Claire said yes through tears. Not because she was surprised, but because she was ready. When they began planning the wedding, Claire didn't think of Derek at first. But then, while flipping through a binder of venue options, she paused at one familiar image. A sweeping vineyard just outside of town. The same one Derek once scoffed at, saying, "Yeah right, like you could ever afford that." Claire circled it in pen. She made the call, booked the date, and paid the deposit in full. No help. No hesitation. Then she picked out the invitations, hand-pressed. Minimalist cream stuck with gold trim. One envelope she didn't send by mail. She had it delivered in person. To the house they once shared. To Derek, no note. Just the invite. The wedding was everything she'd once believed she couldn't have. Not because of money, but because of self-worth. Sunlight bathed the vines in warm gold. Live jazz hummed beneath the chatter. Guests wore soft florals and pastel suits. And Claire stood tall in a gown that draped and hugged every curve. The very ones Derek used to criticize in the name of honesty. As she walked down the aisle, the guests rose. But she only saw Ethan, steady, smiling, eyes filled with awe. She held his gaze like an anchor. The vows came later, and when she spoke, her voice was clear, strong, and unapologetic. To the man I love, thank you for seeing me clearly, for knowing my worth before I remembered it myself. And to the ones who didn't, thank you, too. You taught me what love isn't. You made me believe I wasn't lovable, but I am. And I chose someone who knew it before I did. Applause. Sniffles. Cheers. Later, at the reception, Claire saw him, Derek, standing awkwardly near the bar. No date beside him. He looked out of place. Shirt too stiff, hands in pockets, eyes darting around as if searching for someone to justify his presence. He watched as people toasted Claire, hugged her, celebrated her. He watched joy radiate from her face. Not manufactured, not performative. Real. And then Claire walked over to him, calm, graceful, glowing. "Derek," she said with a nod. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to deflect, but she cut through gently. "Thank you for coming." He looked stunned. She leaned in just slightly and said, "You were wrong." And then, without waiting for a response, she smiled and turned. Her heels clicked against the stone path as she walked back into the center of her new life. The one she built, the one she deserved, the one that had no room left for doubt. Claire sits in her sunlit office, sipping tea between client sessions, surrounded by warm tones, bookshelves, and the quiet hum of healing. There's a framed quote on the wall behind her desk. "You survived. Now you get to live." It's not just for her clients. It's for her too. She thinks back to the version of herself who once cried behind the steering wheel in a parking lot at midnight, whispering apologies to no one. That girl felt broken, abandoned, unlovable, but she kept going. And now she runs her own trauma-informed therapy practice, a space built intentionally for women like her, the ones who were told they were too much or not enough. Clients come in shaking and leave standing taller. They trust her because she's lived the same ache they're trying to outrun, and she no longer hides it at home. Claire and Ethan have started the foster licensing process. They want to take in teens, especially girls, who feel like the world has already given up on them. Claire knows exactly how to meet them in that space, with honesty and care and the promise that broken beginnings don't mean broken futures. And tucked into her bedside drawer, folded and slightly faded, is the list. The same list she scribbled on a napkin the night she left Derek. Things I was always afraid to do. Nearly every line is now checked off. Go back to school. Check. Start my own practice. Check. Be alone. Check. Learn to love again. Check. She keeps the list not as proof of revenge, but as proof of resurrection. Because the real revenge wasn't the vineyard or the dress, or even Derek's stunned silence as she walked away. It was waking up every morning without dread. It was liking her own reflection. It was choosing joy without waiting for permission. Claire doesn't need to say it out loud anymore. But some days, when the sun hits just right and she hears Ethan's laugh from the next room, she'll smile softly to herself and think, "You were so wrong about me." Claire stands on the sidewalk outside the old apartment, the one bedroom. Walk up where she once packed her life into two trash bags and drove away with shaking hands and a hollow chest. It hasn't changed much. The same cracked tile in the entryway, the same uneven blinds in the front window. But Claire has changed. Completely. She doesn't cry. She doesn't flinch. She just stands there, hands in the pockets of her coat, breathing in the quiet weight of the past. For a long time, this place haunted her. The silence, the slammed doors, the echo of cruel words spoken in the kitchen at midnight. Words that once defined her. Now, they're just echoes. She steps forward, places a small folded note on the steps. A goodbye, not for Derek, but for the version of herself who once lived here. The girl who doubted, begged, apologized for taking up space. She doesn't live here anymore. Eclair turns to the camera, calm, collected, eyes steady. The truth is, he was right about one thing. No one will ever love me like he did. A beat. Thank God. She smiles, not with vengeance.